Oh, this is a question about the dedication of the book. The dedication of the book is to former Vice President Dick Cheney. Oh, please let me interview you. I bring good tidings of Vice President Cheney. You may have heard that he recently got a new heart. Which is implicitly hilarious, apparently, but it's also true. And I've never known anybody who's had a heart transplant before, but I would assume it's the kind of thing that lays you up forever, right? But apparently he's up and around and doing great. And he did his first public speaking engagement post-heart transplant yesterday. He spoke to some Wyoming Republican convention thing. So for me, A, I'm happy that he's feeling good enough to do that, but B, maybe that means he's feeling well enough to talk to me. I dedicated the book to him because I haven't been trying to interview him for a long time. Every time I do any sort of interview where it's not me interviewing somebody, but it's somebody interviewing me, I always say, please would you ask me who I would most like to interview? Because maybe Dick Cheney will read this. I would interview any member of the Cheney family. So I give him this book in the hopes that will attract him to me. I will say though, the reason I want to interview him though is actually not so much about his time as Vice President in the George W. Bush administration. I think part of the reason, I don't know exactly when I started wanting to write the book, but part of the reason that I did is I felt like that frustration that I was describing, that sort of emotional, inchoate feeling that we're having about this divide we have from the wars, I felt like particularly among liberals like myself, there was a sense that if there was blame to be had for whatever caused this problem that was making us all feel bad, the blame surely went to the George W. Bush and Dick Cheney administration. It was surely something about our post 9/11 policies. And I certainly have a lot of issues with our post 9/11 policies and that administration. Tons and tons of issues. I could go on. But I think that the divide that we're feeling, I think that the way that we have changed started before 9/11, and so I wanted to kind of illuminate some of the things that I thought were already in place by the time 9/11 happened. And that's actually why there's very little George W. Bush in the book. It's not about the Iraq War. There's very little Barack Obama in the book. The time frame of the book mostly is done with by the time 9/11 happens. And Dick Cheney, for whatever, however easy he is to caricature for his time as Vice President, actually had a hugely key role in a lot of the other changes that happened in other parts of his time in government. I'll give you two. When he was in the Defense Department, the Defense Department let out a small contract, like a small research contract, it was like $4 million or something, to a private company to study whether or not the little logistics things that private companies had done for American military deployments overseas. And there had always been private companies involved in some small way, places like Rwanda and Somalia and Haiti and all of this. Around that time, they had been doing little things, but he let out a contract for a study to see whether or not the logistics of sending the military abroad could be outsourced in a really big way. So it wouldn't just be that somebody would have a fuel supply contract, or somebody would have a desert uniforms contract. It would actually be that one company would have a wholesale logistics contract for an overseas deployment, and that would mean building the barracks, building the roads to the barracks, doing security for convoys, driving the convoys, providing the fuel, peeling the potatoes, feeding everybody, operating the PX, doing the phone calls home, all of the logistics that aren't fighting. Could they be done by a single company in a single contract? Study that. So this company studied it and found, well, yes, it could be done, but only by one company that we know of. Which is like when George W. Bush asked Dick Cheney to study who could be his vice president. I did a thing with Bill Maher this week in LA, and Bill Maher's reaction to that was, yeah, and then I realized I've been shaping the guy. So it was a pick-me moment for Halliburton. And they studied it, they found that only they were qualified to do this. And so at the end of Dick Cheney's time in the Defense Department under Poppy Bush, and then radically expanded under the Clinton-Gore administration. We saw stuff that had never been privatized in the military done by private contractors. And the Clinton-Gore administration, this is what I say about it not being a conspiracy or not being a partisan thing either. The Clinton-Gore administration, they loved this. Remember when Gore was doing the whole reinventing government thing? One of his examples of the shining way we could reinvent government to make everything work better was how happy they were with the privatization of non-using force military functions in the Defense Department. That was one of their examples of how great reinventing government could be. And that changed us as a country. I don't think they did it because they wanted to change us as a country. I find the conspiracy theory that could explain it very entertaining, but when I look back to what they were doing at the time, I just don't think that was it. I think they thought it was going to be a cheaper way to do it. It was this idea of the kind of MBA, CEO presidency that we run everything like a business, and businesses liked outsourcing, so maybe we should do that with government too. But it had a structural impact, and I think a moral impact on us as a country. Because now, one of the constraints about making war as a country is that we call people up and deploy them. And those people, whether they are guardsmen and reservists or active duty troops, or whether they are people who are drafted, we feel them wrenched from home, literally sent abroad. We worry about them, we know they're gone, we realize that we have to pay for them while they're there. But if the ranks of those deployed is bolstered by a lot of people who work for a private company, A, we don't really know how much their services cost. And it turns out it's not cheaper. B, when they misbehave, we have no idea what the lines of accountability are. The Kubara Buster green slime from the vent thing is one of the good, gross out, kind of 9-year-old boy jokes in the book. I'm like that. So there's a lot of little gross things like that. They're the writing equivalent of heart jokes. But the one thing that's in the book that is actually gross, that I will warn you is actually sort of upsetting, is that I spent some time explaining the sex slave ring that was run by members of DynCorp in the Balkans conflict. And there's this crucial detail, which is that these guys who were doing really horrific human things as part of a contract to do helicopter maintenance for the US deployment there, they were not subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. They weren't members of the military. They were not subject to Bosnian law or to any law in any of the countries in which they were serving, because that was the terms of the contract. And there was no court in the United States that felt like they had jurisdiction over something that was happening over there. So when these guys did stuff that is hair-raising and blood-curdling, there's no accountability for it. The other side of it, too, is that when these people get hurt or killed, we don't think of them as casualties. The companies that they work for don't even necessarily have a responsibility to admit that they have been hurt or killed. So all of that insulates us from all sorts of different costs about a deployment. And so if deploying a lot of people is one of the constraints on us going to war, because that upsets the public, that takes away one of those constraints. So, Dick Cheney. So this is the preamble. So the question is, I'm a little long-winded, I'm sorry. One of the things I would like to ask him is, when you let out that contract, that little $4 million study contract, did you know what you were heading toward? Did you think of that as a small-scale decision, or did you realize that would restructure the way that Americans related to troops being deployed in our name? I feel like the best questions in an interview are ones that you really don't know the answer to, and I have no idea what he would say to that. And I don't know that anybody's ever asked him that, and I would love to. So, thanks.